United Kingdom, the culturally rich country of Europe, where the sun never sets. Having served in the Korean War and supporting Korea on the international stage, Britain has had a relationship with Korea for over 130 years. Britain has a close relationship with Korea in politics, economy, and culture. Let's hear about the political and economic relationships of the two countries. High-tech field, including IT and biotechnology, along with the UK-Korea trade relations, and the activities of the British ambassador to Korea, which include issues on climate change and cultural relations through K-pop and other various content.
Today we have the tremendous opportunity of welcoming the Ambassador of Great Britain to the Republic of Korea, Ambassador Charles Hay, here in our studio. And we'll have a chance to talk in depth about the evolving relationship between the United Kingdom and the Republic of Korea and get his insights on issues involving economics, international relations, and politics. So welcome, Ambassador Hayes. Welcome to our show.
Thank you very much.
So let's start out first by expressing our great pleasure and honor to have you with us today. It's been, I believe, now 1 year since you received your credentials here as ambassador. Tell us a little bit about your experiences over the last year here in Korea.
Well, it's been just a year since I've been ambassador, but I was here for 6 months before studying Korean. So I've been here in Seoul now for 18 months. And it's been a really fantastic experience for me personally and professionally. We're going to talk a lot about the relationship between Britain and Korea, but it is a really, really good, solid relationship. And I've found Korea to be an incredibly warm and welcoming country. And I've had a really fantastic welcome. And my family have too, as we've settled into Korea. So it's been a great experience so far.
So you're here with your whole family then in Korea? Yes,
I have my wife and 2 small children, 2 daughters aged 10 and 7.
Excellent, excellent. I have 2 small children here in Seoul as well. Now, as I understand it, the United Kingdom was the second Western nation to establish diplomatic relations with Korea back in the 19th century. So the relationship, the diplomatic relationship has a long and proud history. Can you tell us a little bit about that time-honored relationship and how it has evolved?
Well, you're right. The relationship between Britain and Korea is a very long-standing one. We established relations 133 years ago.
133 years ago.
And for pretty much all of that time, we've had our embassy and residence in exactly the same spot in Seoul.
Right.
And I'm lucky enough to live in a house that's 126 years old this year. And that really, for me, is a kind of physical manifestation of the length and importance of this relationship. I think if we look back, the most important moment since we established relations was the Korean War, when the UK was a major participant, the second biggest participant after the US, with more than 50,000 troops taking part and more than 1,000 dying. And that was an incredibly important moment in the relationship. And it's interesting to me how it really resonates still today. People constantly mention it. It's a very, very important thing. People remember how the UK stood by the side of Korea at that very difficult moment. And of course, in more recent times, it's been marked by a blossoming of trade and investment, particularly since the signature of the EU-Korea FTA.
So, in the present day, at this moment, there's been a lot in the news about this successful testing of a nuclear weapon by North Korea, which they claim was a hydrogen bomb, which has, of course, shocked the international community. So the United Kingdom, and there was a specific case, I think, with the Korea-EU summit at which Pyongyang was called upon firmly to stop these nuclear testings, this nuclear program. Tell us a little bit about what the British government's position is now, and maybe your own personal insights.
Well, the first thing to note is that we don't know yet exactly what happened, what kind of a test it was. But it does seem likely that it was some sort of nuclear test, which would be the 4th, of course, that DPRK has carried out. And I think the most important thing is that it's not just against the relationship between the EU and Korea. It's actually North Korea is in breach of United Nations agreements.
Right.
It's in breach of nuclear non-proliferation agreements, and it's in breach of the six-party agreement statement
Right.
from 2005. And we put out a very strong statement very quickly. My foreign minister, Philip Hammond, happened to be in the region at the time in China, condemning the test, if the nuclear test took place, and outlining that we would be standing shoulder to shoulder with our partners in the United Nations, because of course the UK is a permanent member
Right.
of the UN Security Council, and we will look to take action with our partners to strengthen the existing regime of sanctions against North Korea.
Right, right. So there's been tremendous concern in the international community after last year's IS attacks and the various different terrorist activities that have been going on ever since. It's not only for the UK and Europe, it's also for Korea. It's been a tremendous challenge. Tell us a little bit about, in London, what the response has been, what new policies have been adjusted, what changes have taken place since those attacks.
Well, the recent attacks in Istanbul have yet again underlined the threat that we're all facing now
Right.
from Daesh. One thing I want to underline is that this is not, Daesh present themselves as being representing Islam, but they're not. They're using religion as a cloak for extremism. And in their actions, they murder Muslims and non-Muslims alike.
Right.
In one sense, things haven't changed in London, because one of the things that life goes on, because one of the things that we need to do is to keep on behaving in a normal way, because to do otherwise will be to give terrorists the victory that they want.
Right.
They want to disrupt our lives. But of course, the UK has been a victim of terrorism as well. The attack in Tunisia
Right.
was a brutal attack on British holidaymakers. The threat is very real for us. So over the last year, our security services have taken action to foil 7 potential new threats against the UK. So we're obviously working very hard with partners on the, if you like, on the security and intelligence side to
Right.
defeat Daesh. And of course, we're taking action in the region. So the UK is now taking part in the international campaign in Syria. And of course, it's not just a military campaign.
Right.
Set alongside that, there's a political and diplomatic campaign to try to resolve the situation in Syria.
So just a technical question for our audience. You used the term Daesh. Many of us are familiar with the term IS. Can you maybe just explain to us what the significance of those terms are?
Yes, absolutely. Well, IS, of course, stands for Islamic State, but the point is that it's not a state, because
Right.
it's not a state that's recognized or a country. And as I said earlier, it's not representing Islam, so it's wrong to give them the label that they want, which is to give them some sort of cover that they are acting in the name of Islam, because they're not. So hence Daesh.
Okay, so related topic, but slightly different in its implications. Because of the conflicts in the Middle East over the last few years, there's been a tremendous issue of migration and the refugees who've poured into Europe seeking asylum or to find a home, and this has caused all sorts of very serious discussions and issues, and I think even sort of a cultural trauma even. How is the UK responding to this challenge, and what are your insights into the larger implications of this, I think we could call it a crisis?
Well, you're right to highlight this new phenomenon, which is huge population movements, particularly to Europe, but also to other parts of the globe.
Right.
And I should say that in the UK, we're very proud of our history of taking in people who are seeking sanction,
Right.
who have a genuine need for asylum. And in the period up to Christmas, we fulfilled the government's target, which was to bring in 1,000 of the most vulnerable refugees and give them asylum.
Right.
One of the most important things we can do internationally is do something for the large numbers of refugees in the region, because of course most of them ultimately want to go home. They don't want to
Absolutely.
leave the region,
Right.
leave their country and
Right.
go and live somewhere else. So we've given up, it's up to £1 billion in assistance for for refugees in the region. And we are, as I say, we're giving refuge to people who have a genuine case for it, but we're also working with European partners to try to limit the numbers who don't have a genuine case, who are economic migrants.
Right. Very important topic. And I wanted to say, of course, this is related to the issue of the EU and Great Britain's relationship with the EU, so slightly different topic, but related. And so the EU, Great Britain's played an enormous role in shaping the EU and its direction and the nature of the organization, European Union. But at this moment, there's, of course, a heated discussion about this topic as well. And there was recently the Prime Minister, David Cameron, announced that there's a potential referendum, I think, next year about the question of the relationship with the EU. And there's a sort of popular term, I can't pronounce it. Brexit is
Brexit,
Brexit, right? About the possibility of maybe some sort of distancing from the EU for Great Britain. Can you tell us a little bit about what the consensus is in Great Britain today about this issue of the relationship with the EU and what's behind this discussion?
Yes, it's an important issue. And our current government has a manifesto commitment when they were elected to have a referendum to give a say to the whole of the British people on whether the UK should remain in the EU or whether the UK should leave the EU.
Right.
And the term Brexit, I think it originally arose when Greece was going through financial difficulties. And people were talking about a Greek exit, which became a Grexit. So now, of course, people talk about a Brexit. So the commitment is that the referendum will take place before the end of 2017.
Right.
We don't yet know exactly when within that period it's likely to be, but sometime between now and then. And what's happening at the moment is that the Prime Minister is engaging with our European partners to try to negotiate a better deal for the UK within the EU.
Right.
Because it's the best thing that we could hope to achieve is a reformed EU with the UK inside it.
Right.
And we've now set out some of our requests to our European partners in a number of areas, including welfare payments, free movement of people, and so on. And that negotiation process is underway. And at the end of it, the Prime Minister will decide whether or not that represents a good deal for the UK and the EU. And then he'll decide how he wants to campaign during the referendum. So all that is ahead of us over the coming period.
Right. So is the UK economy showing some positive signs in terms of recovery, and that FTA you just mentioned, the Korea-EU, and the new trade activity between the two countries, Great Britain and Korea, with lower tariffs and increased trade. There's much anticipation on the Korean side in terms of what that positive impact it might have. What is your sense in terms of where that trade relationship, where it is now, how it's evolving, and what concretely might the Koreans appropriately anticipate from that relationship?
Well, as I say, the numbers are going up continuously. And the very interesting thing about the UK-Korea trade relationship, people ask me sometimes, businessmen, what areas are doing well, what sectors are doing well in Korea? And the answer is that actually all sectors are doing extremely well. If you look across the board, everything from major industrial products, raw materials, cars are doing particularly well here. You may have noticed more Jaguar Land Rovers, Bentleys and other British cars. Even Aston Martin now are doing very well here. Through to smaller engineering and, of course, luxury products. So the Burberrys and Mulberrys and so on are all doing exceptionally well here in Korea. And, of course, the other direction, Korean cars are doing exceptionally well in the UK, electronic products and so on and so forth. What we're seeing increasingly is more investment in both ways. And last year in the summer, I visited a couple of major Korean investments in the UK. So Lotte Chemical in the northeast of England. And Busan, who'd bought a Scottish engineering company, Doosan Babcock. And it was very good to visit the Mersey Gateway, which is a new bridge near Liverpool, which is built a third and financed by Samsung, and financed also partly through Korean money. And now there are 200 Korean companies that are listed in the UK. So
that's significant.
Very significant. So I would like to see more investment and obviously more trade, but we're already in a very good place. Korea is the third largest destination country for UK exports. after China and Australia in the region. So that's very significant.
So a parallel topic with trade is finance. And we have heard frequently Great Britain sort of highlighted as a leading country in terms of financial technology, fintech, and that there's been a lot of very exciting innovation in Great Britain recently. And it's getting a lot of attention, of course, here in Korea, because Koreans also, especially in Seoul, imagine Seoul to be a future sort of financial center, I think in some ways modeled on what London has become. So are there any specific cooperative efforts in terms of finance or technology or policy between the two countries? And what is in effect now? And what do you see going forward?
I think this is a really exciting area for cooperation between the UK and Korea. And last May, we had the UK-Korea Financial Forum. The Deputy Governor of the Bank of England came across to that, Andrew Bailey. And there was a lot of talk at that stage about the area fintech, which is a slightly obscure term, but it basically means using better platforms for payment, better data analysis and exchange of information to achieve better financial outputs for people. It's quite hard to sum it up in a
institutional software, hardware sort of combination. Or?
Yes, exactly right. And the UK is a world leader in fintech.
Right.
And across all the areas of fintech, now the fintech business in Britain is worth something like £20 billion a year.
Very impressive.
And I think that Korea is also a very good candidate for successful fintech because, like the UK, it has a very technologically literate, innovative consumer base, access to capital for investment, and an interest in innovation and in doing things in a new way. And so we're seeing some very interesting developments. I can't go into too much detail at the moment because a lot of it's still work in progress.
I understand.
But I very much hope there'll be quite a major announcement on UK-Korea fintech cooperation within the coming months.
So specifically, you yourself had previously served at the UK permanent representation to the EU, specializing on economics and finance, these topics we're just discussing now. Tell us a little bit from your expertise on your view on the Korean economy now, what you've seen over the last year here, and what's your impressions in terms of how you think the Korean economy is doing these days?
Well, I mean, I'd underline my support for many of the things that the Korean government is trying to achieve, which is to boost the creativity and innovation in the economy. Better regulation. Better regulation is something that we in the UK have been working very hard at as well. We've had a lot of conversations and exchange of information about it, because better regulation isn't about cutting regulation, it's about making it more efficient so that we continue to protect consumers, we continue to have good health and safety, for example, and protect the environment. We just do it in a smarter way so that it increases the possibility for business to do well and not be hampered by over-regulation.
Right.
That's a very important area. And of course, all the other areas to, for example, free up the labour market. These are all areas which should provide a boost for the Korean economy going forward.
Excellent. So, slightly different topic. Again, we want to talk a little bit about the environment and the response both in Korea and in Great Britain to the challenges, environment and climate change. So I understand that you've been engaged in a sort of unique project in Hampyeong-gun in Jeollanam-do province, developing a new solar energy plant. We have a short video illustrating this effort, so let's take a look first.
Hampyeong, South Jeolla Province is located in the southern part of the Korean peninsula. The British ambassador to Korea is here to support a private solar power plant project.
I hope this project in Hampyeong will help solar energy to spread even more rapidly, creating business opportunities, new jobs and other benefits to local communities.
It is exceptional for a foreign ambassador to Korea to support a private Korean renewable energy project.
우리 주한영국 대사에서 일정 부분 지분 참여를 해서 그게 얻어지는 수익금을 고아원이 있는데 수익금 전액을 기탁하는 이런 아주 의미 있는 행사였습니다.
That afternoon, the ambassador visits the solar energy power plant in Hampyeong at Taedong Reservoir.
What it does is it generates electricity, enough electricity to power about 300 homes, and it does it without generating any carbon at all because it's from solar energy. And that's really important, particularly in this week of the Paris meeting of the world's governments who are coming together to combat climate change.
Solar energy generation systems cost more to build on water than land, but less heat is lost and is more effective by over 10%.
How can I say competitive advantage is good price and there's quite long sustainability. So almost 20 years we can stay.
Okay.
Excellent. And then also quite good resistance to water. Waterproof, excellent. Yeah.
Because this module can be built on water, it is being seen as a new alternative energy in Korea, where land is limited.
At a time when we're all looking for ways to generate electricity in a way that doesn't generate carbon, solar power is one of the ways that it can be done. So I'm delighted that we're working together with our partners to show how this is possible.
The British ambassador to Korea gave hope to the effort Hampyeong is making to protect the environment. He sends an encouraging message to the green energy business of Korea.
So, Ambassador Haid, tell us a little bit about how this solar energy program works.
Well, it's a really exciting project, and as you saw in the clip, it consists of a solar farm on a reservoir. And once you've installed it, basically it will continue to generate electricity with no carbon emissions. And it seems to us that's a very good model for the future to find, to work with partners to create renewable projects and hopefully to encourage others to set up their own solar farms. Because there's quite a lot of misconceptions about solar. You don't need to have blazing sunshine, for most of the day, every day of the year. You can still generate a good, obviously it will depending on the weather conditions, but you can still generate significant amounts of electricity.
Right. So I heard, and I was very excited actually to hear this, that the embassy actually has a climate change unit. And tell us a little bit about this rather unique institution and its role, its activities here in Korea.
Well, the Foreign Office, my home department, the Diplomatic Service, we have a network of climate change offices and teams around the world in the most significant countries. And the aim of that network is to do a number of things, is to work with partners like in that project to promote carbon efficient, low carbon energy, to look for opportunities for our businesses to cooperate, to look for ways that our governments can cooperate. So in the clip was taken before the Paris meeting of the parties, as it's called. And that was a tremendously successful outcome, with 95% countries accounting for 95% of all carbon emissions getting together to agree targets for the future. And Korea was a very important player in that. So we obviously spent quite a lot of time talking to the Korean government about their approach to that too. So these are the kinds of things that the climate change team does.
Excellent. So I know within Great Britain itself, there were a lot of storms, I believe, over Christmas, and there's evidence around the world about this tremendous emerging threat. So what are some specifics in terms of the UK's policies both for adaptation to and mitigation of climate change? For example, I believe there's a, Energy and Climate Change Committee in Parliament now. Tell us a little bit about that committee's function and also what the more general parameters of the effort in the UK today are.
Well, for a long time, the British government of all parties really has had a very strong commitment to climate change. And one of my jobs in the past, in 2005, when Tony Blair was Prime Minister, was working on G8 issues. And at the time, the UK had a G8 summit, and one of the main priorities was climate change. So it's been a priority for a very long time. And the currently we have a legally binding commitment to cut our carbon emissions by 2015, to cut them by 80% compared to 1990. So that's a very, very major cut.
Right.
The weather conditions you refer to in the UK, yes, we had unprecedented rainfall in parts of Britain, which led to devastating floods. Now, it's quite hard to specifically tie extreme weather events like that to climate change.
Right.
But what we do know is that as the climate changes, there will be more and more of these unprecedented weather events, whether it's floods, droughts, whatever.
Hurricanes,
exactly. There will be more extreme weather events. So it's incumbent on, I mean, one of the important reasons why we need to take action now to try to resolve the situation. The Parliament has a Energy and Climate Change Committee, and the role of that committee is to give advice to the government on a whole range of areas, including how the UK is doing in terms of meeting climate change targets. So I think it's another example of the commitment that the UK government has to reaching its targets.
So there were some other initiatives undertaken, both in terms of financial services, insurance related to climate change, which has been experimented with in Great Britain, and also in agriculture, new breeds and new strains that are more adapted to new environmental challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about that sort of innovation, maybe a little bit outside of the immediate government realm?
Yes, well, there's a huge amount of work going on to both mitigate, i.e. reduce the impact of carbon emissions, but adapt. You know, how do we adapt to a new world of higher carbon and these weather events we're talking about? And that's particularly important for the insurance industry. And the UK, as you know, is a big centre for insurance and reinsurance. And last year there was a big study done on the impact on the insurance industry of climate change. And the industry is starting to adapt itself, not least by looking for new ways to insure against these extreme weather events. But I think an important point which underlies your question is that there are opportunities here, in fact, and for green energy, for things like battery storage, better energy networks, etc., etc. So there's a lot of potential for business, and the green, if you like, the green economy is growing fast.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about a slightly lighter topic of culture and your experiences. Your first term serving in an Asian country, I believe. So tell us a little bit about the specific experience you've had. And you mentioned about the 6 months you had previously before you started actual working as an ambassador.
Well, my background up to now has been very much in Europe. I did live in Asia when I was a child. I lived for a couple of years in Laos, but I was quite young at the time. So this is my first Asian posting, my first extensive experience of living in Asia, and I wanted to come here. It was in our system, you're not just sent somewhere. You choose, you bid for a post. So I bid for this job, and I was lucky enough to get it. The reason that I wanted to come here was to experience a very different culture. Of course, you know, Europe is our neighbourhood. I wanted to come literally to the other side of the world to experience a very different culture. I wanted to come to an area which was innovative, dynamic, growing, fast-moving, and Korea has proved to be all of those things. It also is a wonderful place to live. As I mentioned at the beginning, I have a family here. I've got 2 small children. It's a very, very safe place to live. The food is fantastic. And there's so much to discover culturally and artistically. It's been a great voyage of discovery for me. And it continues. I learn something new every single day.
Now, globally, British culture, of course, has become very sort of universal as over a long period of time. But now we see in the case of Korea, the opposite. I mean, Korean culture, Korean K-pop or webtoons or other aspects are being introduced, including in Great Britain. So what has been the reception on the other side for Korean culture?
Very positive. Korean food is becoming better known in the UK. I've seen more and more Korean restaurants appearing in London, which has been a very good sign.
Excellent.
A number of British universities have now set up programs for teaching Korean language and literature and cultural studies. And I asked the head of one of these institutions, you know, what is it that brings people to want to study Korea? And you know, I'd assumed there would be some link. But what happens apparently is that as young people, they get exposed to Korea through K-pop, through so all the things you refer to. And that gets them interested in Korea, and then they come and study Korean. So that's, you know, it's wonderful how through all these cultural offerings, Korea is becoming much, much better known to people in the UK.
Now, you had a chance also to read a little bit of Korean literature, I understand. Tell us a little bit about your impressions personally about the Korean literature.
Well, when I discovered I had this job, I joined a reading group, a literary circle at the Korean Cultural Centre in London. And it was wonderful because each month we'd study a different book and then we'd discuss it. And through those discussions, I learned a lot more about Korean culture, about the Korean way of life. So I was having my Korean lessons during the day, and then once a month in the evening I go to this book circle and learn more about about the broader culture and history of Korea. And I've come across some wonderful authors. My wife has two, and there's one Korean author who's Mr. Hwang, who's one of his books are only translated into French.
Is that right?
Mr. Han, I think is probably his most famous one. So there's a lot that I want to do to explore more Korean literature and culture. It's just a question of time.
I fully understand. So on the topic of culture and literature specifically, this year marks the quattrocentennial 400th anniversary of the death of the great British writer William Shakespeare. Can you tell us a little bit about what you have planned to commemorate this occasion and promote that great author?
Yes, well, Shakespeare is really a global
very much
figure,
so.
but also very, very British. And his words really run through the English language like a sort of thread. It's sometimes not always easy to see that, but his influence, it's impossible to overstate his influence in the English language. This is a very significant anniversary. So we have a big campaign called Shakespeare Lives. And there are a number of different elements to this campaign, but one interesting one is that we are asking people to record, just do little clips for YouTube or Facebook of their favourite Shakespeare quote and why it's important to them. I have done this, so if your viewers want to go onto the Embassy Facebook page, they'll find a link to me reciting a little bit of Othello.
I'm curious.
And the idea of that is partly to raise awareness of a charitable part of this, which is to raise money through an organisation called VSO to help children who don't have access, who are not literate, who need access to reading instruction. So that's one part of it. We're also working in Korea specifically through the British Council, which is the cultural arm of the British government, to work with Korean theatres to show Shakespeare plays. We're hoping that Shakespeare films will also be shown at various times. And also for the Paju Literary Festival, we're going to bring across some poets to discuss poetry with a particular Shakespeare slant to it. So there's a whole range of different activities going on during the course of this year.
That sounds quite exciting. I hope I can go to that event. Your experience, you've talked a little bit about your learning. You learned a little bit of Korean and learned Korean culture. You had this homestay experience. Maybe you could say a word about how you approached that.
Well, after I did my formal studies here in Korea, I went to spend 3 weeks on a homestay with a Korean family in Busan.
Excellent.
And a lot of people ask me, why did you go to Busan? Even people from Busan ask me why I went to Busan. But the answer, of course, is that Busan is a really interesting and very important city. And I knew I was going to be living in Seoul for 3 years, so I wanted to learn a bit about another part of Korea. So that's why I went to go to Busan. And I loved it there. I loved the atmosphere. It's very different to Seoul. The family I was staying with were very kind. They helped me very much with not only with my Korean language, but also in my Korean cultural immersion. And I had lots of fun times with them. They introduced me to lots of new foods that I hadn't eaten before. But probably most importantly to real noraebang culture.
Very important, very important. And by the way, I hear you were granted an honorary doctorate from the university in Chungju, and even became an honorary citizen of that wonderful town of Chungju. So we have another short video about that experience we'll watch right now.
This is Korea National University of Transportation in Chungju, North Chungcheong Province. British Ambassador Charles Hay is here to receive an honorary doctorate. He hasn't worn a graduation gown for a long time. He looks excited to be wearing a graduation cap.
마음에 들어요.
That sounds good. That sounds good.
아시다시피 영국은 그 현대적인 의미의 교통수단이나 교통시설들이 가장 먼저 발달한 나라이기 때문에 그 나라 대학들 또 그 나라와 교류가 우리 대학 입장에서 굉장히 중요하다고 생각했고요.
The ambassador is receiving a doctorate in business management. He now has a degree in philosophy and politics from the University of Southampton and an MBA from Korea National University of Transportation.
Would you please come with me, guys? You know how to close. Communication investor.
Yeah, getting a degree from this university was a great honour for me. It was a very humbling experience and really a very significant mark of affection between the UK and Korea. So I feel it's a very moving, very meaningful day for me today.
After receiving the doctorate, the ambassador delivers a lecture to the students of the university. He shares his various experience in the Czech Republic, Spain, and Belgium.
부임하기 전에 부산에서 3주간 민박을 했다고 그러잖아요. 그럴 정도로 한국에 대한 애정도 굉장히 많으시고 또 강연을 들어보니까 국제 문제, 여러 가지 복잡한 문제에 대한 그런 회박한 이해와 또 지식, 또 전략을 두루 갖추고 있는 아주 좋은 분이라는 생각이 들었습니다.
That afternoon, at a farm in Chungju. The ambassador is here because he is being granted honorary citizenship of Chungju.
우리 충주를 국제적으로 좀 알리고 또 우리 충주의 청소년들과 학생들이 국제적인 안목을 가지고 큰 인물이 될 수 있도록 그런 계기가 되기 위해서 대사님을 명예시민으로 모셨습니다.
At the ceremony, there was a demonstration of Taekyeon, a traditional Korean martial arts, and a kugak performance to welcome the ambassador.
Chungju is such a well-known place, well known for being the birthplace of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. It's known for its rowing and it's known above all for its excellent fruit and vegetables. And I'm delighted to have had the chance to come and visit and get to know the place. And I'm going to come back. I'm going to bring my family back and we're all going to explore Chungju together in the future.
It's been almost a year since he came to Korea. Hopefully, his relationship with Chungju, where there is a good balance of city life and farm life, will be a stepping stone for his life in Korea.
Looks like it was a wonderful experience there in Chungju.
It was.
Any lasting memories from that particular occasion?
Lots. Again, the very, very warm welcome, and as I said in the clip, I felt very, very honoured and proud to have been recognised in that way. And I think it says a lot about the excellent relationship between the UK and Korea.
And for this coming year, any other plans or activities that you'd like to share with us?
Well, lots of plans. I mean, to continue to build on the good relationship. We're about to get a new Korean ambassador in London, so working with him on developing the bilateral relationship from both ends. I'd particularly like to see more investments, Korean investments into the UK.
Right.
And as we continue to work within the FTA, I'd like to see a development of the services markets, in particular legal services. And
on the Korean side?
On the Korean side.
Right.
So there's a lot of appetite for British law firms to come and work in the Korean market. I think there are great opportunities for both Korea and the UK if we can expand the legal market in that way. So that's just an example of the sort of things we have on the agenda. And I'd like to improve my Korean as well, if I can find time to do my homework.
Well, it's been a very exciting opportunity for us to learn about UK-Korean relations, and I can see you've been very active, and I can imagine this year will be a very busy one as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.